So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. We have Luis hosting another Ask Me Anything with Ghostar today. So we're really excited about it. And we're gonna let you guys jump right in and get started.
Yep. Thank you, Jesse. Well, as she said, this is the fourth episode of the Topcoder Nation show. As you may know, I'm Luis, a maestro in the community. This is a show made from the members, for the members. And today I'm honored to have this guest who was chosen by the community. He is a legend, a titan in the community. He joined Topcoder back in 2001. You can imagine how much history he has in the community, how much knowledge. And he has been a developer, copilot. He knows the platform from feet to head. He has also been member of the community advisory board. He's been everywhere in the platform, actually. And we are honored to have him today. His name is Justin. He's known as Ghostar in the community. Welcome, Justin. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thanks, Luis. Yeah, it's a good day. Good Friday morning, nice and sunny out. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, crazy. I'm still on Thursday. You're ahead of time. Yeah, he's actually joining us from Australia. It's very early for him in the morning. And then yeah, today, why are we here today? We're gonna host an AMA with him. You will be able to ask him anything. And the way it works is I collect questions from a Google form that I'm gonna be reading to him. But also, if you didn't have the time or you didn't get to see the link to ask him any question you have, there's here below. There's a Q&A button that you can click and you can add your questions in there. So I am also going to be reading those for him. And yeah, so the first part of the session, we're going to meet him. We're going to get what is he into, and then the second part, we're going for the questions. So hang in there for the question because some interesting stuff is coming right now. Yeah, so just Justin, for a start, tell us about how you joined Topcoder, because we know that you joined back in 2001, and you're about to become a 20 years old member experience in there. So how did it happen? How did you hear about Topcoder?
To be honest, I do not remember how I heard about Topcoder. So I was in university at the time. I'm sure there was some sort of article on Slashdot or one of those tech websites back in the day that said, hey, look at Topcoder. I had done programming competitions in high school. So when I was 16, 17, I'd done a lot of programming competitions, enjoyed those. And so when Topcoder came around and it was really just focused on the SRMs, that was really the only thing that they did. That was kind of appealing to me. So I kind of joined up and went through some practice things. I don't think I competed in an SRM for a little while. I just kind of used the arena and kind of practiced on some things and then competed a year or two after I joined up. And then, yeah, when Topcoder started to launch the development side, so when we would do designs and development competitions, that's when I started to really get involved quite heavily. I think that was around 2004. Yeah. So
yeah, man.
Started that, and then it just snowballed and snowballed. Then I quit my job in 2005, and I've been with Topcoder ever since. So.
Wow. So I think most of the story of most of the members is that they may come to compete in the SRMs. I mean, this is how we normally find out sometimes. And then we find our I don't know, our passion or what is more interesting to us in the process. And you mentioned there that you quit your job, right? And so it's been, I mean, I don't know this, but it's been basically 15 years that you've been working solely with Topcoder. Is that right?
Yep, pretty much. I've taken like one or two local contracts over those years. So like 2008, 2009, when the global financial crisis hit, the Topcoder stuff was a little rocky at the time. So I picked up a local contract for 6 months. But other than that, I've been full-time with Topcoder for almost 15 and a half. It'll be 16 years in December.
Wow. Man. So, and how did it happen? Did you start with development competitions and?
Yeah, so back in the day, we used to do the waterfall model So we would do design competitions where software engineers would do the UML diagrams and document everything. And then it would go from there to a development competition. And I did a lot of designs back in the day and reviewing. So that was kind of my bread and butter for the first couple of years. And then I was kind of the first, before we called it a copilot, I was in charge of the UML tool. So all of the designers would do all their designs in the tool that Topcoder created. So I helped Topcoder kind of manage that process of creating the UML tool, worked with a couple guys to develop it. And then the community ended up using that for all our competitions while we were still doing that sort of thing.
Wow. Yeah, I think this UML tool was meant for design in terms of software design, right?
Right. Yep. Not studio stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember seeing. I think. I'm just finding out that you were behind it, but I remember competing in a couple of UI design challenges for the Topcoder UML tool, and that I won. How the user interface was going to look.
Yeah. We did like little challenges to do. We made all our own icons and a look and feel for Java and everything. Yeah. It was.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And so well, you said it right. You said it right. It was this thing that you're doing, let's say copiloting right now. It wasn't called copilot. So you were let's say one of the pioneers of this role that helps the clients. But I guess I just started with Topcoder, like being this guinea pig to test how this will work. And how does it work being a copilot at Topcoder? If you can explain us.
You mean just explain the general, what does a copilot do?
Yeah.
So a copilot, it basically, I would call myself like a technical project manager. So I am aware of the code enough to be able to tell developers what to do and to be able to go in and find problems and fix things if needed and kind of do that technical side of things. But I also work with the client to define requirements, get their feedback, capture that feedback, and then give that client feedback and client requirements to the developers to do what they want. And then when the developers are done doing their thing, I'm able to give that back to the client and say, hey, we took your feedback. We did the thing that you wanted. Here's the updates. Here's where you can find it. If it's a mobile app, here's a build that you can test. Or if it's a web app, here's a test server that you can go click around on and see if things look right. So it's basically just a go-between between the client and the members, so that the members don't have to have meetings and do all that sort of stuff with the client. The members can just do the fun bit, which is the development and and then I can help the client in kind of, suss out the requirements and everything that they need in a way that I can give it to the community to work on.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, you said like coders, developers, they do the fun part of it, which is coding it. And we have to understand that this copilot role is, there are many different things that we can do at Topcoder other than competing. And the copiloting role is more technical management, as Justin said. And but as I mentioned here, these are different things. For instance, I know that you were a competitor. You have such extraordinary skills for development, and you should have the skills for management. So I just wanted to hear, out of a curious thought, what do you think would be the skills that a copilot should have that are different from, of course, the developer to succeed as a copilot?
Well, I think communication skills are important because you're dealing with the client and you have to keep the client happy and be organized and available to the client. The availability is a big thing, where I'm checking my email first thing in the morning and before I go to bed every night, just to make sure that nothing came in, that I can respond to things, that I can show the client that, hey, we're around, we're listening to you, we're organized. So if they ask for a status update, or sometimes I'll proactively just give them a status update, say, here are the things we're working on, just so you know that, we're not just not doing anything right now. We are doing things behind the scenes, because sometimes the clients don't necessarily follow along real well with like what the challenges are and what's going on. So the copilot sometimes has to say, hey, here are the things that are happening right now for your project, just so you know that work is being done, even if you're not in the system watching it at any given time. So yeah, just that level of organization is real important, because especially if you're dealing with, you're never dealing with just one project at a time as a copilot, you're dealing with 6. So it's keeping track of 6 different projects and checking in on 6 different projects every day, and keeping all the different requirements in check and keeping the clients happy and doing all sorts of that sort of stuff. So it's a little bit more time spent just communicating in email and Slack and different things to make sure that everything is working across all the projects and the clients are happy.
Wow. Yeah. So if I got it right, and this is also a great lesson for me, if I want to keep a client happy, should be careful with the communications and being proactive about communicating the status of the projects, what is happening, what is going on, what are the next steps. And well, something about there too that I wanted to follow on was about also about the client happiness. I mean, because when you're a competitor, basically you are focusing more on the code, on making the code clean, it's readable, it has the latest patterns of good coding. And what is out there for managers or technical managers like copilots to follow? I mean, in terms of trends, or I mean, compared as coders do, they have the scorecards for making sure that they're doing things right. How does a manager make sure that he's doing things right?
That's a tough one to evaluate. We don't really have scorecards or anything to. But clients tend to not be shy when it comes to sharing feedback. So if they're unhappy, you're not gonna miss that. They're gonna let you know that they're unhappy about things. But it really just comes back to, all that communication, making sure they know what's going on, and you never want to catch them by surprise. And if you do catch them by surprise and you say, hey, something's not working, or we're just struggling with something, if you can't just come to the client and just say something's not working, or we're not able to do this, without having options for them to say, here's what I think we should do going forward to make this better. Like, you never just come and just say it's not working and then just leave it at that. You have to come and say it's not working, but I think we could do this to make it better. And these are the pros and cons of different approaches and stuff, just so that they know that, you kind of butter them up. You say, we know things aren't working quite right, but here's how we think we can change it to make it better and keep going and, keep the project moving, as opposed to saying the project's burning down around us and we don't know what's going on. So they don't like that.
Yeah. No, it's good to know that. I mean, it's not, it's part of the skill. It's part of the skill of that a manager should have for.
Well, and it comes back to really knowing what the community can do, because a lot of times there's things that clients will ask that don't fit perfectly into a challenge. It's not going to be, we just want this chunk of code, take it out to a code challenge, get it done, put it in. That's a lot of times it just doesn't work like that. So you have to be creative about how you use the community to do the work. So, if there's different things that come in, you can do tasks with specific people that might have specific skills. I keep just in the back of my mind, I always know members who I've worked with in the past that are good at very specific things that I know are reliable. So if a weird request comes in, I can go to somebody and say, hey, I've got a project that's an Internet of Things C++ app that maybe doesn't quite fit well in a code challenge, if there's strange hardware requirements or that sort of thing. But I know 4 or 5 people that I can go to and say, hey, we've got this project coming up. I think it'll be a good fit for you. Are you available? Can you help me out? That sort of thing going forward. And just kind of know the ins and outs of the community to be able to do that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I guess it requires a lot of practice and experience and getting to know the community. It takes time to get to that point.
Well, and that part of that is my history of remembering everything that Topcoder's ever done over the last 2 decades.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I can remember that. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. We used to do architecture competitions. Maybe we can do something like that, but in a different way now. Kind of come up with a new type of challenge or new output for things that might help a project. We were just a recent project I had come in. The client gave us a bunch of code that wasn't documented, and we needed to be able to edit it. So I kind of ran what we used to call an architecture challenge, but in the code track, but it was really just to document the code that the client gave us about where things are, how it runs, and kind of generate the stuff that we would need to be able to edit the customer's code. So stuff like that, where you just have to be creative. You have to think, I need to use the community, but how do I fit that into whatever Topcoder's challenges are at the moment? So
Yeah, that makes me think of this trait quote, as say knowledge is power. When you have this whole amount of knowledge about all of the history, can become very powerful and valuable for projects. And one last thing about skills that I wanted to follow on what you said before about managing several projects at a time. Even at a week, I know by experience that we can maybe handle 3, 4. Or there's people who are octopus can handle 8 or 10 projects per week. That's quite an achievement. How do you manage to control and track, let's say, 5 different projects in a week? What do you use tools? I don't know, what mechanism do you have in hand?
Well, Slack is the biggest thing, because that's a lot of our clients are in Slack. So I'm always in Slack getting feedback from them. And then the Git repositories are huge. So I mean, right away in the morning, I go into my email and I go into Slack, because I know I'm going to have things that clients are saying, hey, we need changes. And I can go right from there and log it in GitLab or GitHub, depending on where the code is, as an issue, and then circle back on it later. But at least I'm moving it from Slack, which is very, stuff's just coming into Slack all the time. So I gotta grab it out of Slack and put it into the right spot, and then I can circle back on it later and get it assigned out to a member, that sort of thing. And then I use an app called Todoist. So it just tracks Todoist. Yeah. So that tracks my to-do list every day. So I can add recurring tasks to that and say, check in on this every other day. Or when I was working on the new discussion forums, we were doing a fortnightly release. So every 2 weeks, I had a to-do in there to just say, plan a production release and get that done. And just reminders to be like, some of this stuff doesn't happen very often. So you just got to put it in somewhere and have the computer remind you to do things on a regular basis.
That's a very good use of a computer.
But I would say 90% of my day is spent in Gmail, Slack, and then GitLab and GitHub. Those three things there. That's where I live.
Oh man, yeah. I hear you, and I'm always very curious about this type of mechanism, because sometimes it can get difficult to handle deadlines, time zones, tasks, reminders, and we got, as you said, we gotta be proactive about the stuff. And if we don't remember when are the supposed deadlines to be, that's not a good start. I'm glad to hear. I'm gonna check this app Todoist. I didn't hear of it before. Yes, I think actually I got something from you. If I can confess something as a secret fan admirer, I think it was, I don't know, it was a long time ago. I saw you posting something on the forums that you used Wunderlist as an app for, and I used that for a while too. And
Todoist is my new Wunderlist. So
okay. Well, I'm gonna check that one too to see what happening with it. Okay. Well, I want to shift it a little bit to not just work. We know that we're humans. We have hobbies, distractions, and other things to do. I just wanted to ask you upfront, what do you do when you are not working?
When I'm not working, probably the last 3 or 4 years, I've started to run quite a bit, like 40 or 50K a week sort of runs. So, and I run with a charity called Can2. So they raise money for cancer researchers. And then we train Wednesdays at night, and Saturday mornings are our long runs, and then we run marathons. So I'll run my 4th or 5th marathon in 2 weeks. I'll be down in
Wow.
South Australia, so running down through vineyards down there for another marathon. So, and then we'll just start right back up again and do the next one. I think in November, I'll be running over in Queenstown, New Zealand, if we're allowed to go.
Wow, that's awesome,
Run
man.
over there. Yeah. So
That's
I've been
awesome.
enjoying that. It takes quite a bit of time. Like tomorrow morning, our long run is 38 Ks. So that'll be
Wow.
almost 4 hours of running around Sydney.
Yeah.
So
Wow,
but yeah, it's been
man.
good.
That is awesome. I do
Yeah.
love marathons. I mean, the endurance that you must have to be able to last all
Yeah.
the way the 42
So it's a
Ks.
long ways. Yeah. After about 32 Ks, it's not fun anymore. You start to question your sanity and reality itself. It's something that I wouldn't have been able to do in Wisconsin very easily before I moved to Australia, because Wisconsin is so cold and snowy, like 8 months out of the year. You just can't go out and run. You just wouldn't be able to. But in Sydney, since the weather's so nice all the time, it's a lot easier. We're in autumn, winter now, and it'll be 20 degrees today. So that'll be fine.
Yeah, it's fresh. It's fresh. Yeah, that's great. And I wanted to ask you, what was the name of this charity that you mentioned that you're wrong with?
It's called Can2, CANTOO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotta check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and besides running, I mean, let's say, I like to talk about habits, because the habits define actually everything that we are.
Okay.
What would you say that are your most, how do you call it, habitual habits? I mean, let's say, what are you doing in a typical day?
Sure.
Your life.
Definitely the very first thing that I do every single day is I wake up, I come downstairs, and I fire up our espresso machine, and I have at least one coffee, sometimes two.
Wow.
So if I don't have coffee in the morning, it's a bad day. Even before, like tomorrow for our long run, I'll wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I will come down. I'll have a coffee an hour before I go run. So yeah, it's very much coffee focused in the morning. That's my habit every single day.
First thing in the day, coffee.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And if we're traveling, I have to, even when we check into a hotel, even if it's been 30 hours of travel to get to Barcelona or something, I'll have looked on Google Maps to know where the cafes are that are close to the hotel, so I can know where I go in the morning. Gotta plan that out.
Yeah. It reminds me of Harshit. He normally books hotels, but before he books the hotels, he searches for Indian restaurants nearby.
Sure.
If there's no,
Sure.
if there are no Indian restaurants nearby, he won't book a hotel in there. Yeah. Okay, that's great. So, and also something about habits and education. I know that also works. I mean, working as a copilot and actually being in Topcoder means being up to date in everything, technology, stacks, whatever you want to do, you have to be on the edge. So
yeah.
On the same line of reasoning with the habits and education, what are the things that you read, or how do you educate yourself to keep yourself updated, up to date?
Yeah, it's one that as a copilot, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in most technologies. I would say I'm more of a generalist. So I can come in and read up some documentation on how to build a React app and deploy it and test it, but I'm not an expert. Or, with Android development, I am aware of how to run Android Studio and run builds and go in and make changes, but I'm not an expert in development. So it's to the point where if I see projects coming in and I see things taking off, I will get up to speed enough to be able to go in and mess things up on a project, but I'm not necessarily going to be able to go in and start a project from scratch. Does that kind of make sense? It's getting the knowledge of how to run and test and deploy and maybe make small code changes to things. But in terms of actually going in and like creating something new, I probably wouldn't be real good at that right away. Now, if all of a sudden I had to, I could get up to speed and become an expert on some new technology that comes out. but most of the time it's getting to the point where I can run a project, but because I defer everything development wise to the members, I let the members be the experts. And I just kind of sit over the top and just make sure that things compile and run and deploy. But I'm not actually going into making code changes most of the time. I still do sometimes, but it's generally, I say, if I'm going in and making code changes, it's probably because something isn't going quite well. Like I'm not supposed to be going in and doing a bunch of coding. That's where the members are, the people that are better at that than me are supposed to be able to go in and do that. But yeah, in terms of evaluating new technology, I've gotten pretty good at seeing things come up. Like I watch blogs and Slashdot and other things about all these new technologies, and Facebook and Google and Twitter are always releasing new and fancy things like Flutter and some of that stuff. I will go and I'll read up on it a little bit, but I'm pretty good at evaluating if something's going to be long-term or not. Okay. Google is kind of notorious for just throwing things out and saying, look at this cool new thing we did, and then just dropping the ball and never updating it, never supporting it. So when I see that with like Flutter is like Google one, where I'm like, this may not be around for very long before Google gets distracted and goes to something else. So just gotta kind of roll the dice sometimes and say, is this something that I want, that I think is going to be a long-term thing that I want to put my time and effort into learning, or is this going to be a flash in the pan? It's going to be there for 3 months and then go away. So sometimes you just kind of have to guess, say what the issue might be.
Yeah, and what would you say are the signals or parameters that you would pay attention to if you want to evaluate if a tool is going to be long term or short?
Yeah, it's tough to know when something new comes out, but if in 3 or 6 months there's all of a sudden a lot of people using something, you can kind of say, oh, this might have staying power. This might be a longer term thing that will stick around a little bit longer than stuff that just kind of comes and goes. But technology is always changing. We do stuff now that nothing that I was taught in university would have prepared me for. You just kind of have to be constantly learning and doing new things and figuring things out and figuring out. Sometimes it's just a matter of what you like and what you don't. I know that Salesforce is a huge behemoth, and if I knew how to do stuff in Salesforce, I'd be able to have different projects, but I just really don't like it. So I just avoid Salesforce projects on a lot of things, because I just don't think it's a very nice, fun thing to work with. So I'm kind of, it's coming back to bite me sometimes, because I'm on a project now for Topcoder, and it involves Salesforce, and I've been willfully ignorant about it for so long that people just kind of expect that I would know certain things, and I just don't at all. So I kind of have to ask for help a little bit. So one of those things.
Yeah. Well, that what you said, it means right. If you don't like it, you don't have to force yourself to.
Yeah.
To do something. You probably wouldn't end up doing it well.
Yeah. Well, and the mobile stuff, I really liked the mobile apps. Like I really like working on iOS apps and Android apps. I think that's a fun thing to do, and interesting things come out of that. So I tend to try to gravitate more towards those if I can.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of on the same page with that. Also with projects, when there's a project on the table, I mean, I really have to like it, because I know that when there's something in there that strikes me as interesting, I'm gonna put all my efforts, like triple, not even double, triple, and even more to make it succeed, because it's fun.
Yeah.
When it's fun, you wanna do it. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. And stepping back a little bit about the education part, I'm curious to know if you are fond of learning through, I don't know, let's say reading books, podcasts. Do you have anything in mind?
I'm pretty good at learning by doing. Okay. So it's much more, for me, it's kind of watching videos that focus more on the coding end of things. Like
Mm.
it's really hard for me to just read a book and be like, okay, now I know how to do XYZ. That's just not going to work for me. I have to be able to apply the stuff right away and kind of see how it goes. I've used videos from Coursera quite a bit, like some of those classes and different things to get up to speed
Yeah.
on stuff like machine learning and things. But it just, if the format of the videos matches how I learn, then I'll do pretty good. But sometimes they can be a little bit dry and boring, and I lose interest. And it's just a thing where you just have to find what works for you. And you know, everybody's going to be different in that regard. So I know some people just love picking up an O'Reilly book and reading it cover to cover, and that's just not something that I can do. So.
Yeah. Learning in the trenches, how they say.
Yeah.
It's super fun.
Yep.
Okay. Well, before we move forward with the AMA questions, I just have one final one for you, and it's about the Topcoder. I want to know, what do you cherish the most from this work? It could be from the community, from the clients. I mean, it's first thing in your head.
Yeah, there's a few things. So the flexibility that I have is huge. So I don't ask for time off. You know, when we moved from the United States to Australia, I just told Topcoder that I was moving. They didn't really get to have a say in that at all. You know, it's so that flexibility is really nice to just be able to work from anywhere. I can pull out my laptop and get things done. You know, it means my free time is a little bit hard to come by sometimes. You know, it's hard to take a 2-week vacation from Topcoder because projects don't do that. There's always overlaps, and you're always going to be on something. And so yeah, I don't get a lot of free time, but I get a lot of flexibility in when and how I work. And then just being able to work with the members is really rewarding. You know, you're working with a lot of experts and a lot of people that are way smarter than you, which kind of is, you know, instead of getting complacent and just being fine with where you're at, you're always being forced to be better at different things because the members are so far ahead of where I'm at a lot of times, that, you know, to be able to talk to them and guide them and make sure my projects go well, I have to be so much better to be able to, so that they don't think that I'm just being lazy and have no idea what's going on. So that it forces me to, you know, do a lot better in that regard. And then just the variety of projects that I get to work on. You know, I've worked on stuff for NASA. I've worked on stuff for Comcast and Google. It's not projects that I would have had the access to otherwise, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. I also agree with that. With this variety of industries that you can get involved at, is just priceless. I don't think, I don't think, I don't have much experience in many other places, but I really find hard to believe that one can find this wide variety of choices. And it's actually, at the end of the day, it's just what it is. It's a choice, because you get an offer or you can postulate yourself. I mean, regardless of how it works, but it's your choice that you have to make. I want to work with this. I want to work with that. That's priceless.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the flexibility, man. I mean, I have heard crazy stories about, because as you said, I can pick up my laptop anywhere and just work at the airport.
Didn't somebody work from like a hang glider or a parasail or something? Somebody was answering emails.
Paraglide, yeah, it was Thomas from Greece. He said that he was doing paragliding, and he took his phone to answer something to a PM while he was flying over there. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's too much. I feel like there are certain times when you should really be focused on what you're doing and not focus on Topcoder. I think paragliding is one of those.
Yeah, but I think he may be an expert on that. And I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, what has been the experience, maybe let's say fun or craziest place that you have ever worked from? You pick up your laptop, what you can think.
I've ever worked from.
Yeah.
I mean, planes, you know, over the ocean is always something. Different. I try to, you know, if I'm on vacation, I don't like pull up my phone and just do stuff anywhere. But, you know, I've got a, here, let's see if I can pull I have a beach laptop.
Beach laptop. Okay, this is the first time I hear about it.
So I've got this. It's a Dell. It's like it's a ruggedized military laptop, and all sealed up. It's got all these little compartments that open up, and it's
Wow,
all
it's so
waterproof.
cool.
And so if I go to the beach, I just take this and I just throw it in the sand, and it's all
Wow.
sealed up and everything. So
That is amazing. I didn't know that existed.
yeah, and it weighs like 10 kilos. It's super heavy and all
Wow, man.
metal.
Yeah.
It's the same one that like police use and stuff in their police cars. So
Yes, man, that is
so
awesome.
I go to the beach pretty regular during the summer. Why wouldn't you? It's Sydney, go down to
Yeah.
Bondi or yeah,
Yeah.
Manly Beach, and just sit on the sand and got my laptop right there. And
Yeah, man, that is amazing. I think after I post the summary of this episode, many people is going to be running after that laptop.
Yeah.
There are many people who work for the beaches that I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, sadly, well, I mean, I have to end up my part here. Now I'm going to follow up with the questions that people asked in the form. I'm going to share my screen a little bit. You're going to tell me if you, okay, you should be seeing it, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to be reading the questions from the members who gladly asked this question. And also, I just want to remind you guys, for those who are here live with us, you can check the Q&A button on Zoom at the bottom. You can ask your questions in there. I'm also going to be reading those after these. So the first questions is anonymous, and he or she asks, why do you still do Topcoder?
Topcoder has given me and put up with me for a long time. So I feel like we've got a good relationship. I know a lot of people at Topcoder, and we can work together really well. And it really comes down to the flexibility that I have still, and the variety of projects that I get to work on. They're always, not always, but it can be very interesting to work on different things. And it's very rewarding to work with the members because they are head and shoulders above other people that I've worked with. I just know that I can go to the member base and find an expert on just about anything, and be surprised at just the level and quality of the work that comes out of the member base. It makes my life a lot easier because I know that things are going to be done right and things are going to be done well, which it makes it a lot easier on me.
Yeah. Well, we know from you that even you tried to have local contracts a little bit, even though you still work with Topcoder somehow. So that says a lot of the relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one comes from Prince Asubuike. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. So the question is, why is Python your favorite programming language?
I really have taken to Python because I like how quickly and easily it is to get things working. You just write a little file and you run the file. You don't have to compile it. You don't have to do a bunch of stuff. It's easy to install dependencies. There's no crazy syntax. Like I struggle with Node.js sometimes in the asynchronous syntax that it uses and some of the weights, and I just don't like that. But Python is very straightforward. It is very powerful when you add in some of the third-party libraries like NumPy and Pandas and that sort of thing. You can really do a lot. And the other thing I really like about Python, and it's more of a product, not necessarily Python itself, but Jupyter Lab. I love just being able to go into Jupyter and go line by line and just run and try different things. I do that quite a bit. It makes programming a little bit different than what we were used to growing up, where you wrote your whole program and then you ran your program. This is, you're just going line by line and you're running different things and then going back to a line, changing it and running it again and seeing what the output is, which is, it makes it a lot quicker to iterate and try different things and just see what's going on, as opposed to just running one big program start to finish, which I like.
Yeah. I guess it's the mix of traditional programming that we learn. I mean, when I say we, I mean people who learned programming in the 90s and early 2000s with C++ and C#. You have the structured simple way of running code.
Yeah.
So the next one is, what advice can you share to someone who wants to become, I think, well, sorry, I think I misstep in this one. Someone who wants to become an excellent copilot.
Yeah, communication and organization are the two biggest things. You have to be organized and be on top of your project. And when I say on top, I mean, you're the one driving the project. So nobody's gonna do your work for you. You're gonna have to do all of the work that is required for the project to make sure that the project is successful. You are the one who is responsible for what Topcoder calls delivery. So you need to make sure that the project at the end meets the client requirements. There's nobody else that's going to step in and do that for you. So being organized and making sure that every single requirement is documented and being worked on and implemented and tested is your responsibility. And then making sure that the work that's being done day to day is being communicated back to the client so that they know what's happening and can see what's going on, is also the copilot's responsibility. One of the things that I've learned with copiloting over the years is just to get something in front of the client as quickly as possible. So when you start a project, the client just wants to be able to see their stuff and be able to click on it. So one of the things that I do is I spend a lot of time getting CI/CD set up, so continuous integration and deployment for all of my projects, so that whenever a member checks in code or we check in code, it gets deployed or built right away. And then I can always just go to the client and say, here's the very latest. You can always see the latest code here at this web server, or here in test flight is the latest build from your mobile app every time that there's a check-in. So they can always see pretty much up to the hour where we are with progress. So there's never any question of, oh, I wonder if Topcoder did this, or I wonder if this was implemented the way that I want. They can always just go out and see it and then give feedback on it if they want. Sometimes the client doesn't do that, but most of the time they really appreciate being, when I can say, here's the latest things, here are fixes X, Y, and Z, please go have a look and let me know what you think. They like that. They like that collaboration.
Yeah, that's a tight feedback loop in there. So they are always on top of the latest status with the communications. Yeah. Okay. The next one, has there ever been a challenge, a challenging project you led in Topcoder? Which one and why? A challenging project.
There's always been the projects are challenging no matter what. Every project has its own unique challenges. Sometimes it's budget, sometimes it's the timeline, sometimes it's the requirements. I worked on one last year. I won't say specifics, but it was very difficult because the scope and the budget didn't match what the client wanted to do. So the client was constantly changing things and written requirements and changing what they wanted, but we didn't have the budget to be able to do that. So sometimes in situations like that, and I'm getting better at it, you have to go back to Topcoder, your project manager, or somebody who's higher up, Tony or somebody else, and say, hey, this one is, the scope of this is getting way out of whack. The client doesn't understand where we are with the budget and they're asking for too many things. And sometimes you just have to go back to the client and say, hey, we're going to change the contract. We need a little bit more time and money to be able to do what you want. Is that okay? Otherwise, you have to say no to some of their changes, which can be very difficult to communicate gracefully with the client. When they say we want to do something, you have to say, well, I don't think we can, because you don't have the budget, the money, or the time to be able to do that. So it can be very delicate to be able to kind of handle that, to keep the client happy while also staying within the budget and timeline that you have. So yeah, challenges always come up. Never, I mean, the one that I had last year was more challenging than most, and there was a lot of back and forth between Topcoder and the client and myself, just getting things figured out. But I think in the end, everybody was reasonably happy. as happy as everybody can be. You're never going to make everybody happy, but if everybody's only just kind of mildly annoyed, that's a good place to be sometimes. So, and you know, when I was first starting out with copiloting and stuff, there were always challenges with projects that I wouldn't have anticipated, and I was kind of asking myself why that was, and then part of why I think that is because a lot of times if our clients were really good at this, they wouldn't need us. We're the experts. So they're coming to us and saying, you know, hey, help us. And that's where we have to step in and say, hey, there are these challenges that the client has or that we have, but we're a community. We've got a very unique development style. We can work through some of these in a creative way. And sometimes that creativity comes in, like I said before, figuring out a new type of challenge, or running a challenge with a custom scorecard, or finding people in the community that you know are good at a very specific thing and getting them to do stuff directly via tasks. You know, you just have to think outside the box a bit. It's not always just, I'm going to run a code challenge or I'm going to run a bug hunt. It's sometimes you've got to kind of step outside that box and figure things out with the community that works for everybody.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and you made me think of something that has been bugging my mind for a while, and I just want to drill down a little bit on this topic and this question, because I think it's super useful for new or intermediate copilots that are learning, or they want to become very experienced at handling sometimes challenging projects, because we have to face it that sometimes we're going to have some tough cookies to eat, right?
Yep.
So assuming that I'm a new copilot, I came here to the platform, I want to help my clients. And look, I face this situation where, you know, let's say the requirements are larger than the quoted scope. And then we need to push back. And this is part where you said, I can understand that. I mean, for you, it sounds super easy because you have a lot of experience. But I just wanted
it's never easy, yeah.
I just wanted to say, assuming that I'm a new copilot, you know, sometimes it implies that you may be a little bit, I don't know, maybe shy, or you just new, you know, you're getting in there. What would you say that it takes for a copilot to make this decision, to push back? Because you think, because you're the expert, as you said, you think that the scope is not quite well, or there's something shady in there. And what gives you the courage? Or is it courage? Is it experience? What does it take to push back properly?
I think it's yeah, you have to know that you have to be courageous, but you have to know that Topcoder has your back. Like Topcoder wants the project to be successful within the original parameters, and they do not want a client to walk all over the member base. So Topcoder's focus is keeping the client happy, but they also know that they have to keep the member base happy, so that if you're going down a route that's going to make you unhappy, or it's going to make you have to take advantage of the member base, Topcoder doesn't want that at all. So the sooner you let Topcoder know, the better. And really, the sooner that you can identify that there's going to be problems with the budget, the better it is. So, you know, if you're just starting a project, and I've been on projects like this where you don't necessarily know everything up front as a copilot until you're on the project, and you can go in and look at the budget and the game plan. But you should do that right away. Like, you should be looking very closely at what the game plan is and the requirements to be able to say, I don't think this is quite right. I think we need to adjust some things, because it's easier to do that at the beginning of a project than it is at the end. You know, if you get to the end and you're like, hey, we ran out of budget, but we're not done, that's not going to go over well with Topcoder, and it's not going to go over well with the client. But if you can say at the beginning, when you know you haven't spent a lot of money, and you can just kind of say, hey, I think we're kind of headed down a path where we might have budget or timeline problems in the end. Can we adjust that 3, 6, 8 months before we hit that? That's much easier for everybody to wrap their head around and to plan around. So the quicker you can get on top of potential issues, the better. But you know, sometimes you get weeks into a project and or get towards the end and the client's still making changes and stuff. And that's where I would say definitely get Topcoder aware of what's going on, because Topcoder can help guide you in what to say to the client, or you can have Topcoder back you up a little bit. Sometimes it's better if feedback or tough news to a client comes from somebody with an @topcoder.com email address than somebody with a gmail.com email address. So
yeah.
Yeah, and just know that Topcoder would rather know about problems in a project early and know that you have seen them, as opposed to trying to fix them on your own, and then it gets worse and worse, and then at the end of the project things are falling apart. You know, Topcoder has been through thousands of projects. They can step in and offer help and advice way early and help avoid bigger problems in the future.
Yeah, and I think again we captured here one of the features you were advocating, which is communications. You know, you gotta communicate things early.
Well, yeah, and Topcoder needs to be in the loop on communications. It can't just be copilot to client. I mean, that's a lot of it, but you know, if there's problems or if timelines are slipping or that sort of things, you know, there are people at Topcoder that can step in and help Tony and others that just have that. I mean, Tony's been around longer in Topcoder than I have, so he knows what's going on. So
yeah, we know that guy. Okay, I'm gonna jump into the next question. Is from Mosaxel Rachid. I think he's in this call. We need you. He says we need you to lead us, tutor us. What would be your advice for me as a mentor? I think he's saying if you were a mentor.
Yeah. For copilots, it's just getting on top of that organization and that communication and learning from mistakes. Like, even nobody's perfect. No project is going to be run perfectly. At the end of a project, you can always look back at what happened and say, I would have done this differently. I would have done this differently, and I would have done that differently, and the outcome would have been better for everybody. Or I could have avoided headaches that I created for myself at the time. So it's always good to learn, to always be learning from things that happen in a project. You want to learn from things that went well, but you also want to learn from things that didn't go well and say, what could I do better in the future? Like the project that I had go really badly last year, I don't think that I got Topcoder involved early enough. I was kind of it was kind of given out to me as the copilot and said, just deal with the client. I didn't have anybody necessarily a Topcoder that I could, no project manager or anything over me. And when things started to go snowball badly, I should have gotten Topcoder involved earlier. But that's something that I learned from. And now if I see problems in a project, I go to Topcoder quickly and say, hey, you know, here's where I think we're going to run into issues, or, you know, if there's potential budget issues, I just get approval for, you know, going a little bit over or doing different things. And that seems to be fine. So it's just always be learning from things that happen and staying up to date with Topcoder and how things are being run. Sometimes us as the old timers and the copilots, we get very set in our ways about how we run projects or how we run or write challenge specs or, you know, how we do different things. But Topcoder is always evolving. So you kind of always have to say, what is the current way that Topcoder wants things to be done and structured and how we run things, and just kind of be adaptive to what things are changing, which isn't always easy. But sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and say, okay, this is what Topcoder wants. We're going to do it and see how it goes.
Yeah. And that can be translated into processes, tools, systems, anything. And as a matter of fact, I'm testing something new, which is something I think you worked behind the curtains, which is the work manager. The new
I worked on it a little bit. Yeah.
And I just had to learn it because it was actually new for me, even if I am, let's say, quote, old-time copilot. It happens. You gotta get up to date. And I think we have our next question here. It is, what can I study to become a better coder and win challenges? Any suggestions?
This will be out of left field a little bit, but I would say study the submissions that win in any challenge that you compete in. So if you're competing in a challenge and you come in second or third, study the winning submission. Look at their scorecard, because those are all public. You can see what the reviewers said. Look at what they did better than you, and learn from that. That'll be the quickest and easiest way to get your skills up to speed on Topcoder, because Topcoder is very specific with how they structure requirements, how they do reviews. And the quicker you structure how you work to what Topcoder is expecting and how we look at submissions, the more successful you'll be. So if you ever lose a challenge or anything, use that as an opportunity to go and look at people who did better than you and say, what did they do differently? And you can't take the bad feedback that you get in a review scorecard personally. It's very objective. They're just filling out a scorecard. You just have to say, okay, this is what I could have done better. Swallow my pride a little bit and learn from that. And the people that do that learn from their mistakes and challenges and learn from the winning submissions will be the ones that stick around and gain that skill and the ratings and all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, so yeah, it's kind of people who is willing more to uncondition themselves to, so of what they know, to learn something new. Those will be the ones with more odds to learn more. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, we got to the end of the forum questions. So I'm going to turn into the live chat question that we have here. I'm going to be checking here. Let me check here. Okay, we have another one from Rashid Mosaxel. He says, he asks, how do you see yourself in Topcoder after 5 years?
That's a tough one because we're actually, Topcoder is changing how the copiloting works right now. So we're going through a copilot evolution to say, we're trying a few different things. We're saying, here are some ideas that we have about how things work. So it's really hard to say what copiloting is going to look like in 5 years. But I hope to still be doing that. I really like the copiloting. I like the management aspect of things. So I'm hoping that whatever comes out of the evolution, we can find ways to work within that and still be doing the same things we're doing, only maybe with slightly different roles and responsibilities for different people. So, but pretty much 5 years from now, 5 years ago, I was doing this. Hopefully 5 years from now, I'll be kind of doing the same thing. Once you get to this kind of copilot level, or what we're soon going to be calling like the SA level, there isn't a lot of advancement. Like, you're not really going to get new titles or promotions or anything. That's, Topcoder is just kind of like, here's the roles, here's where you fit in, and that's fine. So hopefully, it's not like I'm going to advance to some new role or promotion or anything, but we'll be doing the same work. It'll just be called something different in 5 years, probably.
Yeah, definitely. And I would like to wrap it up with a very off-topic question, and it is, if you were not involved with coding, development, project management, what do you think you would be doing?
What would I be doing? I have no idea. Like, this is all I've ever done. So it's hard for me. It's hard for me to think about what I would be doing otherwise. Like, I honestly have no idea what I would do if I couldn't do technology. Maybe I'd start a brewery or a coffee house or something.
Yeah, I also heard that I think you have some passion with birds and stuff, like maybe.
Oh yeah, my little bird friends I used to come visit. Yeah.
Well, I think we have one last question. It comes from Bird of Prairie. He says, how do you get bored with doing the same thing for so long?
Well, yeah, I mean, projects come in and they are very similar. Most of the websites we build are, you got a single sign-on login, you're doing some stuff, data goes to a database, data comes out of a database, you display it. It's the same thing over and over and over, kind of the same way with mobile apps. You're pulling data from a service, you're displaying it in an UI, people can edit it, save it back to the service. That's 95% of what we do. I guess, it's not really being bored. It's because every project is different. Every project is going to have new challenges, stuff that you haven't seen before that you have to work through. But sometimes it's okay to be bored. You know, it's okay to have a project that's just going really well, really smoothly, that you don't have to think about much. You know, I can go golf in the afternoon or go for a run, don't have to think about it. So sometimes being bored isn't necessarily a bad thing. I can fill my free time with other things. So
yeah, I think I'm kind of on the same page with that. I think actually most of the productive things that we do in life in general comes from boredom. I call it productive boredom, because the boredom could also be a little bit destructive if we're doing nothing. But in general terms, if you have free time in your schedule, just to give room to your creative thoughts to come in and have some fun, because sometimes you are so busy with so many things that your mind doesn't have space to breathe. And I think these things we call boring tasks are so automated, so automatic, that you don't have to even think about them. So you have more space for doing other things in your head. This is my opinion. Okay, we have one more. It comes from Ernest Serum Kuma. Really sorry for mispronouncing your names. I'll try my best. The question is, I would be interested to learn about your story, how you started, and what you did well to get where you are now. I think we can answer the last part with the rest. What did you do well, to get to where you are?
I think part of what I did well was I stuck with it. You know, it wasn't always smooth. There's been hiccups with Topcoder work. You know, when I first started, I was still working full time. So I kind of was balancing full-time work with this Topcoder stuff to see how the Topcoder stuff went. But then in 2005, I kind of said, in 2004, I made more money doing Topcoder work than I did at my full-time job. So maybe I'll take a risk. You know, I was 25, so that's what you do when you're in your early 20s. You take risks. So I took a risk and said, I wonder if I can do this Topcoder thing full time, and it worked out in the long run. You know, there's been hiccups here and there, but nothing major. And then just sticking with it to kind of say, you know, things are always going to change, things are going to evolve, technology is going to be different, but you know, can you work within the confines of what Topcoder has given you to say, yes, I can still make a living, I can still do the work full time, and just kind of figuring out as Topcoder evolves how you can evolve with it to say, yes, this still works for me. And if it doesn't, that, you know, we've seen that over the years. You know, a lot of people don't stay around for that long. They gain experience with Topcoder and they go work at Google or they go work at Facebook. You know, I've got people that I've worked with that work across these giant companies. You know, Google's always recruiting Topcoder. Facebook is always recruiting Topcoders. So it's just one of those things where you just have to either evolve with it or gain the experience and go do something else.
Yeah. Well, Ernest, there you have it. And well, now sadly, that was the last question, guys. I think we can wrap it up here, but not before thanking you all for being here, for your presence. I really appreciate that you guys can jump in and hang out and get to know the members of the community and ask them questions that will probably help you somehow. I know that you have some hiccups in there, and maybe the advice from experienced members from the community can help you. And well, that is all for me. Thank you for being here. Justin, if you have anything to say before we cut the lights.
No, I think we're good. Thanks, Luis. Thanks, Jesse.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much. This has been fantastic.
Guys.
I appreciate all the questions and the great learnings from your talk. So thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your day, night, and all that good stuff.
Sounds good.
Guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
Bye.